Hey everyone, welcome back to Coding Temple's Agile Leaders. We help you develop leadership skills that increase velocity and innovation in growing organizations. I'm your host, Evan Shai. Today we're joined by Serena Sacks Mandel, who is the Global CTO and Transformation Officer for Education at Microsoft, a role that combines her passion for education and innovation. I certainly share that with you. And most recently and exciting is the author of Empowered, Frame Your Narrative, Own Your Power. Thank you so much for being here, Serena.
Thank you for having me. I love the purpose of your podcast, and this is exactly what I want to do: is inspire and motivate and support the velocity of the next generation of leaders.
You, for one, have successfully navigated a diverse and interesting career and a number of career pivots in your life, from corporate to public education, back to corporate, all while raising children, surviving two cancer diagnoses. Can you share just some of your journey with our audience and maybe some of the most important lessons learned along the way?
It has been quite a wild ride. In some ways, I wrote this book because it was something I wish I'd had when I was in my 20s and 30s, to give me perspective, to give me hope, to give me inspiration. And so I hope that it does that for other people. I started out after my master's in New York City with IBM in the finance sector. And really, my first lifelong lessons, career long lessons from that were: there's always more to learn. It was really just the beginning of my learning process, even though I thought I had done so much already. And to stay humble, stay growth mindset, stay open to learning, because it never stops. And that also makes you easier to work with when you're in learning mode, right? You want to be a good teammate. But the lesson, I never thought I was going to go into my master's, was very quantitative and analytical. And I was surprised to be thrust into sales at IBM. And my mentor told me, like in my first few weeks, people buy from people they like. And if you don't think you're in sales, you are. Everybody's always selling their ideas, who they are. There's always a sales process. And it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. But you have to be likable and you have to be interested in other people. So that began my understanding that it's always about the people. And if you read my book, you'll know I survived by not having any feelings and being an island on my own and just powering through. I just worked hard and did well, then it would all work out. And I learned along the way, we are social beings. We need each other, we benefit from each other. And for me, at this point in my life, inspiring, empowering, helping others is what gives me energy and intrinsic satisfaction. So that has been the biggest lesson, to go from isolated, maybe introverted, to part of the world and part of the fabric of the human condition.
If you had to identify a couple skills specifically that have been most impactful for you and the success that you've experienced throughout your career, could you name a couple?
Sure. So certainly resilience is the number one thing. You have to be able to process, not stuff, not deny, not ignore,
Mm.
process feelings, emotions, your state of mind, and move through it. And then get to the other side and say, okay, what do I do? For me, it's always been about action. Whenever something bad happens, I have to process, I have to maybe feel bad for a minute, but then it's like, all right, what am I going to do about this? And once you start taking action, it puts into motion a series of chemical reactions in your body that move you forward and beyond the moment. And at that point, then in your mind, you can start putting whatever happened in the past. That happened, it's done. Now what? So that's super important. Another thing is that in every day and every role, whether it's a good one, whether it's a tough one, there's always an opportunity to contribute and there's always an opportunity to learn. And when you keep learning, even from those tough moments, that gives you fuel and energy for the next set of challenges. And if you're always contributing and adding value, then your organization and your team finds value in you, whether it's a good situation or a tough one. So that contribution and learning go hand in hand. So those are just a couple to get started.
If looking back across your career, has there been one kind of biggest needle moving moment in your career?
So for me, it was after 25 years in commercial IT, Fortune 100 companies. I was consulting at this time. It was around the economic downturn after 2008, 9, 10. And I started working with Florida Virtual School. And I felt like this aha moment. I could use my powers for good, my technology background, my organizational leadership, education. It was like, aha, education is the most fundamental need of any person and region and society. Education is what fuels prosperity for individuals and regions and countries. It isn't just feel good, it is critically important from an economic standpoint for both individuals to be able to support their life and their families, and for that region, for that city, for that state, for that area, country to be successful. And so the quality of education is critically important. And from my perspective, I could see that education was the last greenfield for technology. Back 15 years ago, the only technology in a classroom was maybe a big desktop computer in the back of the classroom that a kid could go play on when they finished their real work. It wasn't integrated. We weren't leveraging the power of technology, the power of data, the power of analytics. We were not leveraging any of this. In fact, the school district that I joined, when email went down, when the system went down, everyone in IT just went home because it didn't matter. It wasn't critical to teaching and learning. And that all changed. It all changed about 10 years ago, and then even more so during the pandemic. And now it's finally becoming a reality, this personalization, able to meet each student where they are. And I know I'm going on and on about educational technology, but I'm so passionate about it. So when I found educational technology and how we could leverage technology to make lives better, that was the turning point. I became so purpose driven. That was the thing for me.
Are you noticing that there's a movement or a broader openness to embracing technology in the classroom, as you pointed to, as a consequence in part of what was catalyzed through the pandemic? Are you seeing more of an offensive posture of them like looking for how do we incorporate technology and leverage technology in the classroom to improve learning outcomes?
Absolutely. So I feel like my purpose of putting technology forefront as integral and mission critical teaching and learning is happening, partly because of the pandemic. So with the pandemic, when we had forced remote learning, teachers had to learn, both higher ed and K-12, had to learn how to use technology to do remote learning. Now, it was done poorly in some cases. So I would say a lack of efficacy, it was infidelity. But that's because when we implement changes in education, they're usually planned and executed over many years. This was like, boom, you are now remote. Teachers don't know how to do it. They don't know how to use the technology. They don't know that remote education is very different. You can't just turn the camera on yourself and do the same kind of lesson, right? It's different. And so you had a lot of students that disengaged and didn't get it because the teachers weren't sure how to do that. Some students thrived. Some students actually do better behind the screen because their stress level is lower than it is actually being in a class with other students. So what you have, excuse me, is this sawtooth where students progressed, some progress more, some progress less, and across different standards. So math, math, English, reading, all those things. There was a sawtooth in terms of how well they did.
Okay.
And since generative AI has come onto the playing field a little over a year ago, we're seeing huge embrace by educators because they want to increase their productivity. They want to take off their plate some of the more mundane tasks. They want to get help in doing more interesting lessons. And generative AI is providing so many opportunities. So absolutely, technology is a part of education. We've gotten past the heart and brain barrier, and now we're into, okay, how do we make the most of this? How do we use this? And the educators have to catch up because we know that students pick up technology really quickly. They're the digital natives.
Totally.
So it's an exciting time.
You've shared some incredible things throughout the book. And the book starts with a chapter that shares the name of the book, Empowered. And it reminded me leadership requires reframing challenges as pathways to success, right? And it feels a little bit like stoicism for me, where every obstacle within that lies an opportunity to improve our condition. And certainly as an entrepreneur, I can relate to that with whether it's product launches that maybe haven't gone well and ultimately served as a way to focus on products or opportunities that were more fruitful, and maybe in part because of lessons learned through those failures. Can you share a story from your journey that exemplifies how you've taken ownership of your narrative and leveraged failure or challenges along the way?
Yeah, and I love the way that you frame that and that you really understood what I was trying to say here is that we can take things that were challenging or negative and turn them into fuel for positive. And some of the things I mentioned in the book is that about my father's passed away now for many decades. And but when I was growing up, he was not very supportive of women being equal to men, let's just say. And I have a brief story that like I had taken a photography class and I really loved taking photos. And at that point in the dark room, just developing them and doing all that work. And I didn't have my own camera. So I asked my father, who and I'll just say he was very well off, and said I would really like a camera for, my next birthday or event. And he said, "You're a girl, you don't need a camera." And he gave one to my brother, like right then. And so there were things like that that happened throughout my childhood that I was told by him that I was less than. Meanwhile, I was playing football with the boys and doing lots of boy things, but I wasn't as much accepted by him. But for me, that became kind of, I'll show you, that became fuel. And I know some people might just cower and maybe feel bad about it. And I'm sure I didn't like it, but I turned that into fuel. And then later on, when I was going to go to college and I had worked, I knew the value of education from a very young age. And with all the chaos and turmoil in my life, I focused on education. I focused on doing well in school. And I did. And my father had said he had always said he had money for me to go to college. I'm the youngest of four. He showed me that by paying for the other my siblings, and he even gave me the money for my applications. But then I said, "Okay, I've decided where I want to go. I need the deposit." He called me on the phone June of my senior year of high school and said he had decided he wasn't paying for my college. And he said not because he couldn't, but because he didn't want to. He didn't think I'd be a good daughter. So that was jet fuel for me. My mother drove me out the next week to Stony Brook. I was living in New York, and I had a meeting with the dean, and the dean saw my grades and scores and accepted me on the spot.
Wow.
And they keep some spaces open for some situations like this. And so I ended up going to a state school and figuring it out. I worked my whole way through, and I graduated. I started college at 17, started my master's at 19, finished both at 22 with a 393, Phi Beta Kappa, and a resume a mile long. I had worked for IBM, I'd worked for the city of New York, and I'd worked on campus. So I paid for my own living situation by working for the Office of Residence Life. And so that ultimate screw you, you don't have to go to college. You can just like basically try and steal my future and create a bad life for me. I was like, no, I get to do this. I'm gonna go to college, and yeah, that turned into fuel.
Could you, I could see that cutting both ways, if you will, creating a certain amount of self-reliance and self-sufficiency, which of course you talk about in the book, as well as potentially making it challenging to trust people. How do you interpret the net impact of that experience and maybe others like it on either your challenge of trusting people or your ability to really be self-reliant and determined for yourself?
So I absolutely was very self-reliant, and I have a whole chapter on self-sufficiency, which is a double-edged sword, and we can talk more about that. So self-reliancy, absolutely, I was going to do this and not rely on anyone else. The trusting thing is interesting, and I have to be very personal and authentic here. That I actually have this self observation, like, why do I trust people when I've been screwed over so much? And I think that I compartmentalize. I think I go, my father was this. That doesn't mean everybody else is. And by nature, my nature is to trust until there's a reason not to. And I guess I didn't let that situation with my father change who I am in my nature. And people have undermined me, and I people have treated me badly in my life, and I just feel that somewhere in my psyche, I would rather trust and get the benefits of positive relationships. And if people do stuff to me, you know what? I just move on. I'm bigger than that. It's happened more times than I want to talk about, but I just move on. It's their problem, not mine. And so many people see me and know who I am. And that's what I just take the positive. I just take the positive energy
I
and
love
leave
that.
the negative.
And maybe it's particularly because of the trust and confidence through experience that you have in yourself and your ability to rebound or deal with any kind of violations of trust from other people that allows you to go confidently and courageously into these relationships with a sense of trust.
I think you're right. So there's a thing in the beginning of my book where I show a picture of me and my siblings, and I'm the youngest. And I say, I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the smartest, I wasn't even the cutest. I had nothing over my siblings, and they're all bigger and older, but I had chutzpah. I probably had more confidence than I deserve. And I do. I bet on myself. I bet on my own success. And it's worked.
It certainly has. I think some of the message that you're communicating right now reminds me of this story that you recount in your book, and it's a pretty chilling early memory with your mother, and quoting here, but my earliest memory was of my mother suffocating me with a pillow when I was a toddler, and she nearly killed me and later told me I didn't suffocate, you are still here. And so there's that. And then you go on to describe her as a source of inspiration, hard work, even feminine charm. The juxtaposition and almost dichotomy there is fascinating. But I think you've started to articulate your ability to appreciate the seemingly contradictions in people's personalities, that we are complex.
We
So,
are.
you know,
It's
yeah.
there's nuance. And I have always had this ability to hold a dichotomy. My mother has driven me nuts, and I have totally disagreed with some of her decisions and actions, and I love her so much. And she is a source of inspiration. And people are complex. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is all good or all bad. And it probably comes out more with my mother than anybody else because she has done some pretty reprehensible things within the family, nothing illegal, but just things like she didn't go to her own mother's funeral. And my aunts were very upset with her, and I didn't agree with her. But that didn't stop me from loving her. My mother, and you'll see if you read the book, I was not wanted. I was the youngest, and my parents, my father was very abusive, and my mother wanted to get out of the relationship. She didn't want to be pregnant again. And when I traced back my own feeling of not thinking I was allowed to exist, literally, I didn't think I should exist. And I did some regression therapy, and it went back to in utero, that, and the practitioner said, oh, what was your mother going through when she was pregnant with you? And I said she didn't want to be pregnant, and she didn't want a fourth child, and she was very stressed. And I actually brought this up with my mother before she had Alzheimer's, and she said this throughout my whole life. Even I talk about how my father told me when I was like 6 or 7 years old, you were a mistake. Like literally, he told me I'm a mistake. And you don't tell a 6-year-old that, even if you're an accident. But I went home crying to my mother because my parents were divorced at that point. And my mother said, yes, but I loved you as soon as you were born. And that was always her answer. So she always admitted to me that it was an unwanted pregnancy, but she loved me as soon as I was born. If I put myself in her position, I certainly can understand why a fourth child was a burden. And it wasn't personal. We all know if you have children, that is a commitment. There's a lot to raising a child, let alone four. So I empathize with what I've always empathized with my mother. She was abused by my father. It was very difficult. And the whole pillow thing, it's not an excuse. She absolutely did the wrong thing, but I probably was crying. I was probably crying. Kids cry. It was a very difficult household environment. I was probably reacting to everything going on around me. And she didn't do the right thing, of course, but I did survive.
Do you think this has at all influenced your ability to understand and empathize and ultimately lead complex and diverse groups of people?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great observation that I've known since I was born that people are multifaceted. And I knew I was complex. Like, I actually, my number one wish when I was young, I just want to be shallow. I just want to be simple. I just want to be,
Life would be
because
so much easier. Yeah.
I would go to camp and people would just be out playing. And I'm like, I wish I wasn't so complex, you know?
Yeah.
But it did serve me later because I really love connecting with people. I would love to be asking you lots of questions too about your background and understanding and finding those connections and those nuances. I guess I look for those layers in others, and it's a source of connection and empathy and understanding. And I will just say, from a leadership standpoint, I swear by strengths-based leadership, by creating a diverse team with various strengths that complement each other. I don't look for people like myself. I look for people that are going to help complement each other and get the job done better than we could individually. And so that's how it translates.
I love that. Is there anything that folks can do to really try and cultivate an environment internally that encourages teams to thrive amidst adversity, whether it's either things that individuals can do for themselves or culturally for a team?
It was just great to have their support and their perspectives again on me being their leader. And we did create a family atmosphere. And I always talk about Kenny. He won't mind that I say this, but he recently retired and he said, "You are the leader that challenged me the most and developed me the most." And he said, inspired him to. And I have this triangle in the book that is my cultural leadership style. And it's a culture of excellence. So the bar is always high. We have to perform at a very high level. And somebody else that was there said, "Oh my gosh, since I've worked for you," and she's at another district now, she goes, "I am like at a world class level. They can't believe they want to learn everything that I'm doing." So I do hold the bar high, having worked at a lot of Fortune 100 companies. But the triangle starts with a foundation of psychological safety.
Mm, mm.
Everybody needs to be able to show up authentically as they are. And that's one of the lessons from the book. When I say authenticity, I don't mean, oh yeah, that trite, oh yes, here I am. It means not perfectly. It means understanding yourself well enough to know what you're good at and what you need other people to help you with. So authenticity takes work. It isn't just let it all hang out. And that authenticity is the foundation of psychological safety. So I want to make sure that people are safe saying what they need help with and what they want help with, and asking for that. And that's not easy because a lot of us have been raised with this self-sufficiency and I can do it all myself. And I'm like, you can't just sit here and try to figure it out yourself. You have resources, you have the supplier, you've got other people. And I can not yell, but I like, you have to ask for help. You can't just sit in a room alone, get other inputs. So that psychological safety, it's okay to not know. It's okay to make a mistake, but admit it, own it, move on, learn from it. The next side is clarity on what your roles, responsibilities, and expectations are. What is expected of me? Your processes, your checks and balances, all of the stuff that goes into your work, it has to be super clear. And in a positive way. For Kenny, he had been he put in the first router. He knew every router, every switch, every server in that network. And I said, "Kenny, you need to stop doing the work and lead the people that are doing the work and be more strategic." And that's what he actually repeated the other night. That's what you wanted me to do. I said, yes, I was growing you as a leader. But to be a leader, you have to be clear about what each person has to do and what success looks like. And then the third one is shared purpose. Why are we doing this? What is the outcome? Now, we were in education, so it was clear. We wanted students to graduate. We wanted them to succeed. We wanted them to have grades. We wanted to move on from level to level. So when you have those three things, that's magical. And it starts with the leader helping everyone to feel safe.
Worshipped at the altar of self-reliance.
Yes.
I fully understand that self-sufficiency is important, but as you've alluded to, it can certainly cut both ways. And with collaboration being so important, is there a story that maybe illustrates how you specifically have become more comfortable asking for help or support from others? I think some of us as leaders could benefit from hearing how we can start to develop and flex that muscle a bit more.
Yeah, and I can certainly understand as an entrepreneur, you think it's all up to you. And even in that role, you have to find people to be in the boat with you, to people to help you, to contribute, even if it's informal. You need some kind of an advisor group. So for me, the turning point really came when I was sick. So when I was sick with cancer, I was single, did not have a partner, and it was emotionally, physically, everything. It was debilitating. But I never stopped working, never stopped going to my nonprofit, my everything, fundraising. I rode on a helicopter after an infusion. I went to the Himalayan Children's Charity Foundation and sponsored an orphan in Nepal. I flew out to California and gave feedback to startup companies on their products. I just went. But I would be sick if I picked something off the floor. I couldn't lean over. I could not put my head down. And people would keep saying, "Oh, what can I do to help? What can I do to help?" And on the sidebar, I could write a book on what to say when somebody's ill versus what not to, because the book would be hilarious about what doesn't work. And I've had somebody say they want to collaborate with me on that because people are well-meaning and they don't know what to say, and there's a lot of things that aren't helpful. When you're sick, you're just gonna have to laugh it off. Anyway, that was the moment I had to learn that not only is it okay to ask for help, it's a gift. It's
Mm,
a gift to the person. We're in a school district. We're not making lots of money. And so there was a administrative professional, and she kept saying every time she saw me, she's like, "Serena, what can I do?" And I had just moved into a new house before I got sick. I said, "Okay, I have a lot of boxes in my garage still, and I don't want them sitting in boxes. I need to get plastic cartons. Can you just help me transfer them? Because I can't lift things, I can't move things." She goes, "Oh my gosh, that's what my daughter does. She helps organize, like she's a professional organizer." Who knew, right? And so they came over on a Saturday morning, and for 3 or 4 hours, they unpacked my boxes and put them in labeled and in plastic cartons. She was so grateful to have been able to help me at no cost. And that to me was such a lesson that when you let people in, they are grateful. They've done a good deed and they feel good about themselves. And I was really grateful to get that kind of help. So who can you ask to unpack your boxes?
I
But
love
she wanted,
it. Love it.
so it's like I keep saying this, and when I talk in groups, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I want to help others, and if somebody asked me to help, of course I would help, right?" So just remember, when you let people in, you're doing them a favor.
I got chills again. I had chills when I originally read it. Again, maybe it's a consequence of being self reliant, but I've always been quite timid to even ask for help and ask for support. Don't want to burden other people. I can handle this, that kind of thing. But it's so true. If I just think about myself in being on the other side of the table, if you will, I am so grateful and feel so rewarded to be able to help and support someone else. And if it can be clear and I can have some guidance in terms of how I can help you.
Yeah. We don't know how to help others. You've got to say it because we don't know. But Evan, let me just say this. If there's anything that I can do for you, let me know because I'm happy to help you.
You had mentioned on the leadership framework, if you will, about not only clear definitions of success, but shared goals, making that clear. For some roles in organizations,
It's hard to find.
it's hard. It's hard to sales and marketing might be clear and easily measurable, but for engineering and technical teams, maybe particularly, it's less apparent about
Mhm.
how you demonstrate that type of impact. Has there been a way that you think about that or
Yeah.
guide others in thinking about that?
Yeah, my husband is an enterprise architect, and he's works for a software company that supports the insurance industry. Most of us have it because it's not medical, it's property, casual, car, auto, things like that. And most of us are just like, oh, we have to have insurance. Like, we don't even want it, but we have to have it. And there's always a customer at the end of the day. And whether it's the insurance company or the end user, us who have to buy the insurance, there's always a customer. And if you put that customer hat on, normally the people doing the work are a customer, right? Anybody doing that programming actually has to buy insurance too. No matter what field you're in, you can find it. I used to think I would never want to go into like the defense industry because I'm a pacifist. I don't want war. I don't want weapons. But if you reframe that and you say, if you have the equipment, you will deter others from attacking. So maybe actually having the weapons will ensure people aren't attacked. But generally, it comes back to the customer. And it might be an internal customer, an external customer, but always come back to people. And that goes back to my original lesson. It's always about the people.
Amen. Totally agree. I was having this conversation with one of our leaders most recently, and it was trying to, we have mentorship programs internally, and this person's maybe a little closer to the front lines, and was trying to figure out how to articulate the kind of overall business value that is impacted. And we were talking about that specifically. How do you get close to the customer?
Right.
There are plenty of ways that we can articulate the value that is being created for customers, and that's important for everyone,
Right.
across the organization.
Just the spoiler is it's about the people. So just find the customer, find the person that benefits from whatever you're doing, and just keep there. I read a book about Medtronics a long time ago, and they actually had patients that had their product, the heart valves or something in them, come to speak at their meetings every year to say, I'm alive because of the product. And having that visual really helps. But if you think about it, there's always a customer. If you're working in an Amazon warehouse, I'm a purchaser of those Amazon things, and I'm grateful when I get that package, especially if it's an emergency and I need it right away. I was having the opening and we realized we needed table coverings, and they came within like less than a day. And thank you to the Amazon warehouse, the Amazon driver, the Amazon everything. So there's always a customer.
I love it. You've alluded to this. How has your sense of purpose guided the strategic decisions you've made throughout your career? I think purpose can be a pretty challenging topic to
Right.
down, I think.
So the third takeaway that I like to talk about the book, we've talked about the other two, is aligning your time, your energy, and your focus with your values. And values are very much related to purpose. I love the way Brene Brown treats values and has you distill them down to two or three top values. And if you want to know what we mean by values, I really refer going to Dare to Lead by Brene Brown and looking at the value section. You can look at it online. You don't have to read the whole book, although she would love it if you did. It's a wonderful book. I've done her workshops. I've met her on video on Teams, and really focusing on what those things are that are most important. For me, going back over a decade, I worked with a life coach, and my three kind of life purposes came down to three words: contribution, making a difference for others. So my personal mission since 2000 has been to help individuals and organizations achieve their potential. And that's always what has driven me. So that's my mission. But my contribution is my word, that I always want to be in a contribution. My jobs, working in the district, working even at Microsoft. And I do want to have a kind of a sidebar that everything I'm saying is me personally. I'm not speaking for Microsoft in any of this. that contribution goes back to that shared purpose. I always want to be doing something of value. My second word is exhilaration, because at the time I didn't have joy in my life. I was in a challenging marriage and work situation, and I was just like work. And I didn't have joy. I realized I hadn't smiled in over a year. So I was like, I need to get some exhilaration back in my life. I need to be climbing the mountain, having a glass of wine with a girlfriend. I need to belly laugh. I need some moments that are like special, that tell me I'm alive, because I felt like I was alive just head up. And my third is serenity.
Mm,
And I
mm,
realized my name is Serena, and that it was aspirational. That was actually the most difficult to achieve, because I'm a go-go person, and sitting calmly, relaxing was like, I once punched somebody because they told me to relax. Like, I don't serenity, and I have to tell you, that's my life has evolved. And maybe it's age, maybe it's because I found my true soulmate, my partner, and we are building our serenity dreams together. And I can see at some point, just I can't wait till I take a day and just watch the water go by for
mm,
the day,
mm.
maybe with a beverage. So those three words really are what drive me. And literally, I just went skiing in Austria, and I was like, this is a moment of exhilaration. This is it, on top of this mountain. And so I have those moments now. So my daily work is contribution. I have moments of exhilaration, and my future vision is to have some calm, peaceful serenity.
Incredible. I got chills again. I bet on that trip you had moments of serenity, presumably, as well.
Yeah, no, that's in the future.
Okay, fair enough. Let me sitting on that for a moment. 'Cause I certainly can relate. I don't put words in your mouth, but my default is pretty intense. I
Yeah.
work a lot, and serenity, at least how I would envision it for myself, would probably still be a balance of extremes, as other people would perceive it. There's an intoxicating aspect of being really immersed and in flow in things, and then a value in truly being tranquil and calm and still, or achieving stillness, if you will. And to me, the right balance of those is maybe how I would define serenity.
Yeah.
Is that in contrast at all to how you think about it?
So everyone has to personalize this for themselves. Those were my three words: work hard, play hard. I was a school of the work hard, play hard, have a ball of fun, ski that black diamond slope. And serenity was not in my vocabulary when I was your age. It may be in terms of, we go through phases in our life. And honestly, I don't get a lot of serenity yet, but I will. We are building our dream house on the lake, and we will have it. And people ask, can you have it all, right? I want to, like, work life balance. And you can. You have to define your work life balance and how much effort. I was just like you, all work. And I did. That exhilaration, the adrenaline from being totally immersed and getting that big win or that big innovation. I had lots of moments like that. And I was addicted to that adrenaline. But I think we go through phases, and you can cultivate moments of peace and serenity just by having a 5-minute meditation a day. And I do think that brings clarity to the rest of our work.
Makes complete sense. I have a couple more questions, and we're approaching time here, but you have a unique vantage point and perspective across both technology and education. When you think about the kind of rapid technological advancements that are happening, how do you recommend that organizations and individuals posture themselves to be able to adapt and continue learning in a way that is allows them to be successful and prepared for some of these advancements that we're all seeing unfold in front of us?
Yeah, so lifelong learning. I mean, I talk about that quite a bit. There's no way you can be in technology today and not be a lifelong learner. I have learned quite a bit in the last couple of years as generative AI has emerged. Are going to be struggling, because those that do are going to have a productivity and innovation advantage. So it's an imperative that the leaders and the workers in a company understand the benefits about and how to leverage AI in order to continue to grow at the pace of the market, because the market's taking off. Whether it's education or any other, every single other industry is leveraging AI, generative AI.
Totally.
There are so many ways to learn. I see, because I am in the education industry, I do see higher ed evolving, and there's a lot more certification programs that are outside of higher ed, maybe community colleges, online programs, badges. And I do see the higher eds, a lot of them are evolving to partner with industry and to provide that education and that learning. The universities or colleges or educational organizations are seeing that there's an opportunity to support this lifelong learning that we're talking about. Of course, there's LinkedIn Learning, there's Coursera, there's lots and lots of opportunities. But I do think that companies need to be specific about what the expectation is with their employees and what is required, and set up learning programs, and perhaps even partner with the higher ed organizations in their geography to ensure that those employees continue to work in the latest technologies. And if you're in programming, it's becoming imperative to use generative AI. They're seeing 80% productivity increases for programming and for troubleshooting and for quality testing. So you have to keep up with these things. You can Bing them and find them all. And the Bing Copilot can be quite helpful. We actually are seeing a lot of people move to Bing because of Copilot. So yes, the answer is yes, lifelong learning is critical. How you do it, there's just so many options.
With all that you have achieved throughout your career and your life, what are you most excited about looking forward, or any ambitious goals for the next couple of years?
I'm typically a futurist. I really like to look towards the future and what's possible. And what I see is that the technology is there, generative AI is there. And once again, it's about the organizational adoption and change management to make the most of it. We see the C-levels saying you have to buy Copilot, and that's great, we want you to. But how does the organization adopt and harness the power of AI? It's really about organizational change management and privacy, security, data analytics, getting all of those things in line is what's critically important now. And so I do look forward to helping organizations prepare and then harness the power of AI. And I think that's going to be the order of the day for the next 5 or 6 years. I also see organizations revamping their back office, the ERP suite, so they have to be more nimble and be able to harness AI. So using AI to help with data analytics. But to order to do that, you have to have the data and the analytics. But I just see that data is the fuel of AI. And organizations that were maybe a little flimsy about that need to get super tight. And so from a technology standpoint, that's what I'm excited about, is helping organizations do that.
I love it. I share that excitement for sure. The organizations are really going to need, I think they're going to, if they wait too long to do something about executing against these AI strategies, they'll find out quickly all of the kind of preparation or preparatory work that's going to be required just to make their data organized and accessible to be fuel for unlocking these AI capabilities. So I think it's something we all need to be leaning into now. Serena, absolute inspiration. I've thoroughly enjoyed reading the book. I'll make sure that our audience has a link to purchase their own copy. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us here live, as well as in the book, and appreciate all the work that you do.
Evan, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and love to stay in touch and support you in any way I can.
I appreciate that.